Greetings everyone, my name is Sean, and welcome to my channel, Time for Evolution. This video series intends to make important academic research articles more accessible to the public. Join me in this quest for knowledge.
Why bold predictions do not lead to conclusive evidence in psychology. Research in experimental psychology proceeds by and large as it does in any natural science. Make an educated guess at the gears and pulleys that drive a phenomenon of interest. Extract from this blueprint a specific if-this, that hypothesis, set up an experiment that might corroborate or falsify the hypothesis by means of a tangible prediction, collect and analyze the data, and conclude for or against our tentative explanation. At the core of this method is a quid pro quo. Make predictions that are extremely unlikely to hold in general, yet flow naturally from your candidate theory. In exchange, you will not have to inductively compile an endless book of proof, but instead may take a small handful of positive instances to deductively establish the truth of a causal or structural explanation. There is no reason to distrust the setup and no other plausible explanation. So this experiment established once and for all the existence of the minimum quantity of electricity that Stoney, 1894, hypothesized in the late 19th century as an explanation for the unique emission spectrum of different gases. When it works, hypothetico-deductive inference is a brilliant epistemic trick that produces large amounts of information from small amounts of observational feedstock. It is impossible for experimental evidence in psychology to truly favor one theory over another. Predictions only loosely connected to hypotheses. When Heinrich Hertz sought to test James Clerk Maxwell's hypothesis that light was a form of electromagnetic radiation, he did so through a series of experiments that proved the existence of electromagnetic waves, that they move at the speed of light, and that they exhibit light-like behaviors of reflection, refraction, diffraction, and polarization. Routio, 2014, paragraph 45. When Heinrich Hertz sought to test James Clerk Maxwell's hypothesis that light was a form of electromagnetic radiation, he did so through a series of experiments that proved the existence of electromagnetic waves, that they move at the speed of light, and that they exhibit light-like behaviors of reflection, refraction, diffraction, and polarization. Experimental psychologists often raise the stakes by testing a hypothesis through not one, but a series of experiments with different stimuli and subjects. The aim is generally to confirm the null hypothesis and reject the alternative hypothesis. The latter approach leads to bold conjectures, whereas the former provides only very meager evidence in favor of the theory under investigation. Hypotheses only loosely connected to theories. A psychologist may posit that people with high social standing will tend to do what they can to maintain that standing, and that they might be inclined to boycott social competitors or withhold access to important resources. If it turns out that instead those of high social standing tend to be magnanimous, this too is explained. Generosity is a great way to showcase one's superior status. When mutually exclusive hypotheses all fit the theory well, or alternatively, when mutually exclusive theories all fit the same hypothesis well, data from an experiment that lends support to a hypothesis will not transitively lend support to the theory that inspired it. Often it is not quite clear what, if anything, a theory implies for the empirical world. Lack of clear implication signals lack of scientific rigor. If a theory does not predict some states of the world and rule out others, it cannot be falsified, and it is not scientific. Indeterminacy of outcomes and under-identification of causes are not a death sentence to the scientific investigation of mind and behavior, as we will explain later, but they do preclude the hypothetico-deductive method. Theories only loosely connected to other theories. In his reflections on 19th century science, William Whewell concluded that successful predictions are essential to science. What is really impressive is science's consilience and coherence, how a theory may inform cases beyond its original scope and how different theories dovetail with each other respectively. Not every theory in physics is wedded to every other, and so we may explain the working of some kinds of laser beams while blissfully unaware of high-energy physics or the behavior of gases, but any theory in mechanics that does not conserve energy will clash with everything we know from thermodynamics. Plebeian induction takes more time, but it makes fewer demands. Its applicability is limited only by our persistence. Psychology as an inductive science. Faced with psychology's poor track record as a hypothetico-deductive science, we may try to find our way out of the swamp by doing better. A key question that the investigators wish to answer is whether the experience can be consistently and uniquely invoked when people are reminded of their connection to others. They theorize that kama muta may have an adaptive function in that it encourages communal sharing relationships. In our opinion, this is serious and valuable research, but if Sheila et al. Insist that we consider it the explorative precursor to a hypothetico-deductive endeavor, all hope is lost. A yes-no hypothesis loosely tied to a vague adaptive explanation is about as far away from a bold theory-driven conjecture as scientifically possible with no obvious recourse. These studies remind us how groundbreaking it can be to just know the facts. Eronen and Bringman, 2021. More experiments and more than experiments. Cunning experimental setup is often necessary to bring elusive phenomena to the fore. When food scientists want to know how well people tolerate chocolate that substitutes a low-calorie sweetener, such as steviol glycoside for sugar, they will prepare a batch of reformulated chocolate and perform a blind triangle test against the original, and it would never occur to these scientists that they could rely on the results from a colleague's report on flavor perception of aspartame in vanilla cupcakes, let alone anatomical results about what taste receptors steviol glycoside will and will not bind to. Along those lines, when psychologists wish to learn more about altruism and fairness, they have found it useful to supplement observational studies of moral behavior with stylized experiments, such as the ubiquitous ultimatum game. One participant decides how much of a sum of money to share with another participant, while the other decides if that amount of money is fair, and if they do not agree, neither receives anything. Henrik is an anthropologist, a discipline known for its meticulous field research and an appreciation of what makes each culture different. Findings. As a discipline, mental health research needs to be a bit more strict, P and W5, a bit more honest and a bit more diligent. Final thoughts. Just about every freshman student of psychology is wowed when first hearing about the invisible gorilla. Cunning experiments designed with the sole purpose of corroborating a theory do not age well. For some of these experiments, attempts at replication show that their findings do not apply beyond the college student demographic, do not generalize to stimuli that ought to be equivalent or turn out to be a statistical fluke. Instead, we start our investigations from the assumption that if a person of reasonable competence and seriousness states a hypothesis about a human social phenomenon, it is almost inevitably valid. Maguire, 2013, P417. Not everywhere for everyone, but somewhere and for some people. Such hypotheses are too weak to support much theory, but they can still help us find mechanisms, frequently occurring and recognizable causal patterns that are triggered under generally unknown conditions or with indeterminate consequences. Elster, 2015.